it's the 25th anniversary of the Jack Hewitt 1998 Four Crown sweep. It's been 12 years since Kyle swept it. Brad, which is more impressive? Jack won 4 races in one night. Kyle only won 3. So who's got the upper hand here?
I wouldn't. This 2 different times and 2 different situations. I mean, I was more in tune with what Kyle was doing, and it felt, possible to do. So, but also heard so many stories about Jack Hewitt, winning all 3 and then getting a modified and winning. So I just think they're equally as impressive. Like anytime you can have everything go right and win that many races in one single night, you're a badass no matter what. So, obviously I knew Kyle was like, it was like the first time I think he'd seen Eldora, and I just knew he was, kind of had that something about him. And I was like, and then that really catapulted him. And I remember that night, like, holy cow, he won all 3. Like it was like things went right a little bit, but like, you knew when he got in that Silver Crown car, like, I was like, man, if he pulls this off, that's crazy. And obviously he did. So yeah, I mean, I just think you're in rare air. Obviously, only 2 guys have ever been able to do it, and a lot of guys have tried.
So, Kyle, you've talked before about that night and how the sprint car race was like one of the luckiest wins of your career because guys were blowing tires and like having all kinds of problems. So, when that happened, and then you got in that Crown car, where was your confidence at that you were going to be able to win the Crown race and win all 3?
Yeah, before the night started, I felt like I would have a good shot to win the midget race. I felt like Brian would probably be the only guy I would have to really beat, back then in Eldora. So I felt confident with that. The sprint car was the first feature race that night. And yeah, I mean, I was scared of Eldora, and I think I ran like 8th for most of the race. And all of a sudden people just started cutting tires, like either blistering them and blowing them. And then, there'd be debris on the track and they'd run it over. And I just kept like moving up. And then I found this lane that worked for me in 1 and 2 where I could run above the cushion and was able to get by some guys, catch some more cautions. And then you'll get by Dave Darling there late and win the race. And when I won that, I was like, oh man, now it's like, this could maybe happen. And, then won the midget race. And once I won the midget race, because we sat on the pole for the Silver Crown race and my car felt really good, I was very confident that we were going to win that Silver Crown race and accomplish a pretty cool feat. And still to this day, that is the most perfect race I feel like I've ever ran. That Silver Crown race. I remember, like, usually when you run a race, you can think of, 2, 3, 4 things that you did that, cost you lap time. Where from what I remember of that race, and maybe I would have, a little bit different standards these days, but back then I remember thinking like I could not have ran a more perfect race. And I remember just being very calm throughout it. I think having in Silver Crown cars, you have a spotter. So, Pete Willoughby was spotting for me, and, he's kind of I can manage my gap behind me. So I just felt calm the whole time, and it just helped me run a good race. And yeah, that was crazy. I mean, that's too, I think, every race car driver can probably think of one night that propelled their career to a different level, that really helped them, make it to the next step or whatever it may be. And the Four Crown was that event for me. As soon as I was able to accomplish that, the phone was ringing. I was on Speed Channel. They were showing my highlights. I remember sitting at like a pizza place the next day with Keith and my parents, and there was Dave Despain on there talking about me. They were showing interviews that Casey Kane and Jeff Gordon and Tony Stewart were all talking about me before the Cup race that day at New Hampshire. So it was just like, I was just in awe. Like I didn't, I knew it was a big race, but I didn't know like doing that was going to be that big. And really, after that is when my career changed and got to come to Charlotte and meet with all the teams. It was pretty crazy.
Awesome. Brad, so you guys race Friday. You're good there this summer, but how different is it going to be this weekend? Weather's going to be different. Not going to be as many cars on the racetrack, laps wise, but what's going to be, how's it going to be different from this summer?
You just never know. I mean, honestly, it's, I think the summer, the track had some rough spots. So it's hard to say if we're going to, if it's going to be smooth or still have some rough spots, left over. So I just unsure. We just take it one night at a time and and whatever it gives us. It's always a little different at Eldora. In May, the summer is always a little slicker, and this race can be a little wetter. So just got to see what we get when we get there, and we just take it one race one night at a time.